There are stars who light up the screen, and then there are souls who light up the world. Patrick Swayze was the second kind. He was the kind of man who made you believe in romance when he danced, made you believe in courage when he fought, and made you believe in something beyond this world when he loved. Millions of people around the globe grew up watching him, fell in love through him, and grieved deeply when he left. But what most people remember most, what cuts deepest even today, are not the movie scenes or the awards or the headlines. It is the final whisper he offered to the woman who had stood beside him through everything. 3 small words that carried the weight of a lifetime. And when you hear the story of how Patrick Swayze spent his last days on this earth, something inside you shifts permanently. To understand what Patrick Swayze's final chapter meant, you first have to understand who he was before cancer stole his strength. Born on August 18, 1952, in Houston, Texas, Patrick was raised in a household built on movement and discipline. His mother, Patsy Swayze, was a renowned choreographer and dance instructor, and from childhood Patrick absorbed rhythm the way most children absorb cartoons. He trained in classical ballet, gymnastics, and football simultaneously, a combination that made him one of the most physically gifted performers of his generation. When he arrived in Hollywood, he did not come quietly. He came with presence. His breakthrough role in The Outsiders in 1983 announced something raw and real. Then came Dirty Dancing in 1987, a film that transformed him overnight from a talented actor into a cultural phenomenon. The character of Johnny Castle, passionate, principled, protective, felt less like a performance and more like a window into who Patrick actually was. The film grossed over $214 million worldwide against a budget of just $6 million, and the iconic lift scene became one of the most recognizable moments in cinema history. But Patrick never let fame hollow him out. He returned to his ranch in the hills of California whenever the noise became too loud. He rode horses. He flew planes. He cooked meals with his wife. He was, by nearly every account from those who knew him, exactly the man he appeared to be on screen, genuine, warm, and deeply committed to the people he loved. In January 2008, Patrick Swayze received news that no amount of physical strength or personal discipline can prepare a person for. He was 55 years old, still actively working, still pouring himself into his craft. He had just completed filming the pilot for The Beast, a television series in which he played a morally complex FBI agent. The role required intensity and physical presence, and by all accounts he delivered both. But behind that performance, something was quietly going wrong inside his body. The symptoms had begun months earlier, a persistent discomfort in his abdomen that he initially dismissed as the physical toll of a demanding shoot. When the pain refused to subside and began interfering with his ability to work, he finally sought medical evaluation. The diagnosis came back as stage 4 pancreatic cancer, one of the most aggressive and lethal forms of the disease. Doctors informed him that the cancer had already spread beyond the pancreas. Survival statistics for pancreatic cancer at that stage are devastating. Median survival is often measured in months, not years. His medical team gave him an honest prognosis, somewhere between 6 months and 2 years. What happened next revealed the core of his character. His wife, Lisa Nemi, who was present when the diagnosis was delivered, later described a moment of extraordinary stillness. Patrick did not fall apart. He did not rage against the unfairness of it. He sat quietly, absorbed what he was being told, and then almost immediately began asking practical questions about treatment. Lisa wrote that his reaction was not the numbness of shock, but rather the focused calm of a man who had decided, in real time, that he was going to fight. He began chemotherapy and simultaneously enrolled in a clinical trial involving an experimental compound called vadalinib, which was designed to restrict the blood supply feeding tumor growth. He approached his treatment with the same discipline he had applied to his dance training and his athletic conditioning, methodically, seriously, and without self-pity. What Patrick Swayze did during his illness is, by any measure, extraordinary. Rather than retreating from public life or stepping back from his career while he still had the strength to work, he returned to the set of The Beast and finished the entire season. He filmed 12 episodes of a demanding dramatic series while undergoing active chemotherapy treatment. He arrived on set before his fellow cast members. He declined pain medication strong enough to dull his performance. He refused special accommodations that would have distinguished him from everyone else on set. Director Michael Dinner later spoke about watching Patrick work during that period and said that if you did not already know what he was enduring, there was almost nothing in his conduct on set that would have told you. He was present, focused, and professional in a way that left the entire crew in quiet disbelief. He also chose not to hide from the public entirely. He gave several high-profile interviews during his illness, speaking with a candor and composure that struck audiences as almost impossible given his circumstances. In a 2009 interview with Barbara Walters, one of the most watched television conversations of that year, he sat with calm authority and spoke openly about his diagnosis, his treatment, and his refusal to accept the role of a dying man. "I'm not finished," he told her. The conviction in his voice was not bravado. It was something more honest than that. It was the voice of a man who had genuinely decided that the time he had left would be spent living, not waiting. He also spoke about fear, specifically about what he was not afraid of. "I'm not afraid of dying," he said in one interview. "I'm afraid of leaving the ones I love behind." That single statement, quiet and unadorned, told you everything you needed to know about what mattered most to Patrick Swayze in the end. Not legacy, not recognition, not the films or the fame. The people. There is no honest account of Patrick Swayze's final years that can be told without centering Lisa Nemi, because she was the center of it. Their story began long before Hollywood, long before the fame, and long before anyone knew his name. They met when Lisa was 14 years old, a student at his mother's dance studio in Houston. Patrick was a young instructor. They fell in love over years of shared movement and shared silence, and they married in June 1975. They were together for 34 years. Their marriage was not without its difficulties. Patrick was open in interviews about personal struggles across his life, including battles with alcohol, grief following the death of his father, and the pressures that come with the kind of fame that turns a person into a symbol. Through all of it, Lisa was present, not performing devotion, actually practicing it, in the daily, quiet, unglamorous ways that real love requires. When cancer arrived, Lisa's role transformed entirely. She became his primary caregiver, his nurse, his protector, and his anchor. She documented the smallest details of his condition daily, his temperature each morning, what he managed to eat, the quality of his sleep, the fluctuations in his mood. She administered his medication. She drove him to treatments. She slept beside him on difficult nights so that he would never wake up alone. Their home in Los Angeles and the ranch they cherished became a world unto itself during those final months. Friends who visited spoke about the quality of the silence in that house, not the silence of sadness, but the silence of two people who had said everything that needed to be said and had simply chosen to be present with each other. They listened to music together. They watched the light change over the hills. Patrick told people who asked that the ranch was the only place where he stopped feeling like a public figure. "When I'm here," he said, "I'm not a star. I'm just me." Lisa would later write about those months in her memoir, describing them not only as the most painful of her life but also, in some paradoxical and private way, among the most intimate. The illness had stripped away every layer of performance and public identity, leaving only two people who had chosen each other completely. By the spring and summer of 2009, it was clear that Patrick's body was losing the fight his spirit was still willing to continue. The treatments were no longer holding the cancer back. It had spread to his liver. Doctors told him, with great care and great honesty, that further aggressive treatment would offer diminishing returns and significant suffering. Patrick made the decision to come home. He spent those final weeks doing the things that had always grounded him. Reading. Listening to music. Sitting near the windows of his home, looking out over the land he loved. Friends who came to visit described a man who had reached a place of profound peace, Not resignation, not defeat, but genuine acceptance. He had faced his diagnosis with courage, had worked as long as his body allowed, had loved Lisa as fully as he could for as long as he could, and now he was ready. There were still difficult moments. Earlier in 2009, he had been hospitalized with pneumonia, a serious complication that had caused many people close to him to fear the end had come. But he recovered and returned home, determined not to leave before he was ready. Lisa said he simply was not finished yet. There was still time he intended to use. As August turned to September, his strength diminished rapidly. He could no longer stand without assistance. His voice had reduced to a whisper. But Lisa never left his side, and those who visited reported that even in his weakened state, Patrick would look at the people he loved and smile. Not a performance of contentment, but the real thing. On the afternoon of September 14, 2009, the world outside Patrick Swayze's home in Los Angeles continued its ordinary business, entirely unaware of what was quietly unfolding inside. The house was still. Sunlight came through the curtains in the way it does on a September afternoon in California. Warm, golden.